Still, Burgoyne held the ground. For days he waited, hoping for reinforcements from New York City that would never arrive on time. Meanwhile, American militia poured in from the surrounding countryside, swelling the Continental ranks by the hour. When it became clear no help was coming, Burgoyne struck again on October 7th at the Battle of Venice Heights, forced to retreat to Saratoga. Now surrounded by a force far larger than his own, Burgoyne surrendered to General Gates on October 17, 1777. An entire British army gone, and in Versailles the news landed like a thunderclap. Saratoga did more than remove an army from the board. It proved something the French court needed to see, that Americans could defeat British regulars in the field. Within months, the clandestine aid became an open alliance. The Franco-American alliance of 1778 brought France's navy, its treasury, and its army into the war openly and at scale. The shattering of Burgoyne's army also wrecked Britain's entire strategy of dividing New England from the other colonies. Patriot morale soared, loyalist support, already fragile, began to wither. And they fixed in it stopped there. Emboldened by the American victory, Spain and the Dutch Republic were drawn, directly or indirectly, into the conflict. What had begun as a colonial rebellion was now a global war, stretching British resources to the breaking point on multiple continents. A republic without weapons. To understand why foreign aid was so essential, we have to go back further to the debt that started it all. The seeds of revolution were planted in the French and Indian War, which erupted in 1754. As Britain and France fought for control of North America, Britain won, but victory came at a staggering cost. Drowning in war debt, the Crown turned to its American colonies for revenue, imposing new taxes and tighter regulations, the Stamp Act and the Townshend Acts. To the colonists, these weren't just inconveniences, they were an assault on their rights as Englishmen, and they were unthinkable. By April 1775, words had turned to gunfire. At Lexington and Concord, colonial militia clashed with British regulars, and the Revolutionary War began. 15 months later, on July 4th, 1776, the Declaration of Independence formally announced the colony's break from Great Britain. But declaring independence and winning it were two very different things. Colonial America had almost no capacity to arm itself. Just a handful of gunworks concentrated in Virginia and Massachusetts. A revolution cannot be fought on ideals alone. It needs powder, muskets, and cannon. For that reason, the infant United States would need to look beyond its own shores, to the Dutch Republic, and above all to France. France enters the shadows. Long before France ever declared war on Britain, it was already at war in secret. French ports quietly supplied the rebellious colonies with muskets, powder, and artillery, including the prized Valliere cannon, which would soon prove decisive. Historians estimate that by 1777, the vast majority of American gunpowder and arms had come from France. The pivotal Battle of Saratoga, as many as 9 in 10 American soldiers carried French weapons. Without this clandestine lifeline, the revolution may have well died in its infancy, and the colonies reclaimed for the crown. France wasn't yet an open ally, but it was already the reason the Continental Army could still fight. Rhode Island, a lesson in coalition warfare. By August 1778, American forces under Major General John Sullivan had besieged British-occupied Newport. French Admiral d'Estaing arrived with a powerful fleet and thousands of troops to help finish the job. For a moment it looked as though Newport might fall, but a violent storm, combined with strategic disagreements between the Allies, forced the French fleet to withdraw to Boston for repairs, leaving the Americans to fight alone. Before they left, though, the mere presence of the French fleet had already forced the British to scuttle several of their own ships to keep them from capture. The British sortied, backed by newly arrived Royal Navy ships, and struck the retreating Americans. The battle ended inconclusively, but the Continentals ultimately pulled back to the mainland, leaving Newport in British hands. It was a reminder. Alliances are powerful, but they are not simple. Storms, egos, and timing could undo even the best laid plans. Fortunately for the Americans, 3 years later, everything would align perfectly. Yorktown, the trap closes. By 1781, the war had ground on for 6 brutal years, but in Virginia, a trap was about to close on the British Army, and it would take a French Navy to spring it. That summer, American and French forces united north of New York City. Washington wanted to strike New York itself. Rochambeau argued for Virginia instead, where British General Cornwallis had made camp. The deciding factor arrived by sea. Word that Admiral de Grasse and the French West Indies fleet intended to sail not to New York but to Chesapeake. Washington and Rochambeau received the opportunity. While staging elaborate deception to convince the British that New York remained their target, the combined Franco-American army marched south toward Virginia. At the end of August, de Grasse's fleet arrived at the Chesapeake, bringing fresh troops and sealing off the bay. The siege. Washington and Rochambeau reached Yorktown on September 28, 1781. Within a day, the Allied army had closed in around Cornwallis's defenses, sealing him in completely by land and by sea. The war for American independence was for all practical purposes over. France's role in the revolution is well known. Far less remembered is the contribution of the Dutch Republic and the man who secured it. John Adams, one of the founding architects of American independence, negotiated one of the most vital financial lifelines of the entire war, a $2 million loan from the Dutch Republic in 1780. The Dutch never signed a formal alliance, and they sent no soldiers, but through neutral trade routes, they supplied enormous quantities of gunpowder, muskets, and other arms. A reluctant ally perhaps, but an indispensable one. The tiny Caribbean island of St. Eustatius became the hub of this shadow trade, allowing American ships to slip past the British naval blockade entirely. Some historians argue that without this Dutch support, the revolution might well have ended in a British victory. In 1782, Adams achieved something just as significant. His diplomatic credentials were formally accepted, making the Dutch Republic only the second nation on earth, after France, to recognize the United States as a sovereign and independent nation. Americans tell themselves as one of self-made independence, of colonial grit alone against a whole empire. And there is truth in that story, but it is not the whole truth. The United States was born not in isolation but in alliance, armed by French muskets, financed by Dutch gold, and delivered to victory by a French fleet in the waters off Yorktown. Saratoga convinced a skeptical French court that the gamble was worth the taking. Yorktown proved it was. It was one of history's great ironies, a revolution against the most powerful monarchy in the world, saved by two of Europe's oldest underdog nations. Without them, there may have been no United States at all. Make sure to check out more content like this on the screen before the video ends. The best way to support this channel is with a thumbs up, and consider subscribing to never miss a moment of the forge of modern history.